Hey guys, Nick here. Today, we will be looking at the aftermath of the Savior arc in The Walking Dead, and what all the characters have been up to for the most part. Can't fit them all into a video like this, have to be kind of a 2-video thing. But anyways, we're going to look at most of the characters from the aftermath of the Savior saga, particularly Maggie, and what she will do whenever she finds out that Negan's been spared, and what will be done afterwards. This is part 18 to What If Rick Spared Shane, the remake. The awesome remake, if I've not said that enough. Anyways, last time we see Negan surviving his blow with the shotgun from Shane, only getting shot in the shoulder instead of the head, like many of you thought. And well, at least until a part or two ago. Anyway, Rick in the end knocked Negan out with his own bat, throwing the bat into the walls of the sanctuary, and ultimately sparing Negan's life. A season early, mind you. Afterwards, tending to Shane, who's looking a little worse for wear, much resembling his Walker reanimation, because his bones were broken this way and that, his face was all roughed up, battered, bruised, bloody, and broken, as I said in the last episode. That's what Shane is. So yeah, he's lucky to even be alive, especially after all he's done throughout my past parts. Anyway, the group reconciles at Alexandria, and Negan is still put in the cell, but he has done far less than his previous or canon counterpart, mainly because he wasn't really given the option to do more. But anyways, he is still put in the cell, but it is under way less strict terms. He's not going to be in there forever like Rick told him to be, because, you know, even though he did kill Abraham and Glenn, it's just a far less strict because of what happened in the original story. I think it speaks for itself. Lori and Carl appreciate Rick for doing this immensely, because we all know that Carl wanted a future with Negan. Well, not at first, but he did. And Lori being around, I feel that her and Carl both would be on the same page, thinking this as a united effort, because, you know, Lori was much like that. She wasn't really the violent type like Rick grew to be. So, anyway, Rick says that the other communities that Negan had under his foot need to know that the battle is now over and they got nothing to worry about, as to not cause, like, tensions that maybe the Saviors are planning a move on their communities, or something like that. Hilltop is the first to be informed of this, and Gregory, you can imagine, is very perplexed at what to believe at this point, because the group had already come to the hilltop, and Shane held up the bat and everything right in front of Gregory's face, and he had signified that as Negan and the Saviors have been dealt with. And now he hears that Negan lived and is now spared. All the other Saviors are still dead, though. It's a lot to take in, even for Gregory. But, speaking of Hilltop, Maggie still has the motive to turn on Rick, because he did still spare Negan, and, you know, he still killed Glenn. And she says she wants to wait for the right moment and do what needs to be done. Her plan to kill Negan, like the original story. And she actually favorites Shane in this regard more, because Rick's more of the bad guy for letting Negan live. Shane at least tried to make amends and kill Negan after he messed up, and with the whole group and everything. And then when he came back, he tried to even do that again. She just favorites Shane more here. And Daryl is on Maggie's side with this, but as I said in the last episode, he is much less on her side with this. He is on the side of Glenn and everything, but after Rick explained about Shane turning bad twice and still coming back, Daryl definitely is on Rick's side about that. So it's kind of like a mixed package. Anyways, while that's going on, we get to the entrance of the kingdom for the first time. And King Ezekiel and, all the kingdom and everything like that. They are next to be informed that the threat of Negan is no more, and that Negan has been spared, but he's going to be locked up for quite some time still for what he did to all the communities and everything else, and the death of some of the folks at Alexandria. And King Ezekiel, which we will still call him because he still has his king authority because none of his people have died. He is very happy to hear this because now his people can actually live in harmony. Morgan also gets a good feel for the kingdom because remember, Carol didn't go off on her own, so he hasn't been to the kingdom yet. And he almost died against Negan, so he's lucky to be alive right now. But anyways, he actually wants to stay at the kingdom, especially after bonding with the likes of Benjamin, like he did in the original story. Except it's a bit later down the line. And also Henry, because, he bonded with him too, especially after Benjamin's death. Ezekiel, like I said, is very happy to hear about Negan not being a threat anymore. Doesn't know how to feel about him still being alive, but he knows now that the saviors are not going to bother him and his community, and still keeps his king authority because, like I said, he hasn't lost anybody. So he's still in good persona with his king leadership and everything. Now, Oceanside. As I've said in my What If Laurie Survived series, since Tara had joined the Saviors, she does not find out about Oceanside, obviously. But Heath does. It's more or less a way to throw Heath a bone from his original outing, which we saw him, what kind of happened to him in Season 7, but still have yet to know anything about him. We know that he was traded off by Jadis, but not much more beyond that. But anyway, he's the one who goes to tell Oceanside and its people because he still wanted to keep his promise about keeping the community a secret. He would honor that like Tara did, kind of. Natanya wouldn't know how to feel about this and whether or not to trust Heath on his word that the saviors are not a threat anymore. But I feel that Cindy, she knew that her grandma was not really as trustworthy as she was. Well, obviously, with everything they had been through with the saviors, who would be trustworthy? But anyways, she decides to take Heath's word on this, and basically, Heath still wants to honor the fact that Oceanside's secret, but now that the community doesn't have to worry about the saviors, that's not so much a priority anymore, but Natanya still tries to stick her guns to that. Now, the junkyard is made known to Rick and the group after Negan spills the beans about every single community that he and his men had conquered. And they are next to tell about Negan not being a threat. Now, Jadis and her people are happy to hear this, even though they had kind of partnered with the saviors. But now that Negan and his saviors really aren't a threat anymore, they're not going to take their guns or their people or the possibility of any of them dying. Jadis and her people still take this with a grain of salt because you know how Jadis and her people were. But it's sort of like a mixed deal once again. And even though the saviors aren't still a thing, I don't know how Jadis and her people would react to this, because I feel that even with this, they might live in peace and harmony for a while, but even with Jadis' people around, I still feel that Jadis would try to steal one of the Alexandria people or someone, try to sell them to the CRM to get into the city, so they would ultimately get themselves killed if they were to do that, which I guarantee they would. It's hard to say, especially at this point, but I feel that would definitely happen. But anyways, that's all the communities knowing about Negan and all that. Now we go back to Alexandria to see what a particular person has been up to. Rick has been tending to Shane, who's been getting better, but it has been a slow recovery, because as I said, Shane has I mean all of his bones broken by Negan and his bats, and he had been shot in his shoulder with the shotgun, reminiscent to what he did to Negan at the clearing. So it's been a slow recovery, but Rick's making sure that he's gotten better. And it's worked for the most part. Like I said, it's been a slow recovery. And Shane sees the poetic irony behind this because, after all, Shane had saved Rick's life and took him to the hospital in the very beginning, and now it's reverse that with Rick taking care of Shane. And Shane definitely gets a crack at this and sees, man, never expected the day would come where our sides got swapped, huh? And Rick definitely smiles at this, and they have a nice bond after a long time of not really seeing eye to eye, especially after Shane got kicked from the group a second time and the whole savior deal. So it's nice that they share a brotherly moment like this to basically rekindle their brothership for basically a third time. So yeah, after that, Rick informs Shane on what he's missed since Negan basically took all the life out of Shane and tells him all about Negan being spared, much to Shane's dismay, and the Savior's not being a threat anymore, and makes sure that he's okay and goes to make sure the communities in Alexandria are doing well in their recovery. Not too much of a recovery, but you know what I mean. Daryl and Maggie still go about their plan to go to Alexandria and formulate some kind of strategy to kill Negan. But first, they want to pay a trip to Alexandria. Maggie is very hesitant to do this, especially without a proper plan to just go in there and kill Negan. But that's not what they're there for yet. They're going to see Shane. Because even though he messed up, causing Rick to spare Shane, or Negan in the first place, he still tried to rectify that situation. Because even though he betrayed the group on multiple occasions, he's made up for it every single time, or at least he's attempted to. But when Rick spared Negan, it was like everything that Shane had tried to do was a whole jangled mess. And honestly, they just want to see how he's been, because he's been a part of the group since the very beginning. And he's made mistakes, but they've all made mistakes. And just want to see how he's recovering. Shane, after seeing Maggie and Daryl, is definitely happy to see them, especially after not seeing him for a good long time, and says that his recovery's going well. Rick's been making sure that he's been alright. He knows about Negan being spared and everything, and definitely is not happy about that. But whenever he hears about Maggie and Daryl trying to formulate a plan to kill Negan on their own, Shane is up for that, but his recovery is still slow. He can't really function as good as he used to, if you guys know what I mean. So he says he's all down for joining them on this plan and doing anything to make up for his past sins, because he's still very sorry for what he's done, especially after Glenn, but says that if he really can't do it, he's on board with them and defends them on their plan to avenge Glenn and Abraham. Well, Glenn more, but, you guys get the deal. Daryl and Maggie, after hearing this, definitely forgive Shane by this point, because, like I said, he's tried to rectify all of his past misdeeds, and him even doing this now, trying to do anything he can to speed up his recovery to help them on this, they tell him not to bother, that they will deal with this on their own, but they're glad that he accepts that. They're glad that he is on their side with killing Negan for Glenn and everything else. Now, here's where we end off the video. Will Shane make a full recovery in time to help Daryl and Maggie with their plan to kill Negan? And with no saviors at all, will the bridge sequence and everything else be changed, leading Rick to either A, die, or B, stay with the group? And with Shane either A, making a full recovery or not, what is the fate of Negan here? Or what is going to happen to Shane at all? And that's where we're going to be leaving things for the moment. Now, you might know what I mean by Shane at all. It's basically him recovering and helping, or him recovering and not helping, basically. Because throughout the series, Shane's been fighting his demons, if I've not made that clear in the past few episodes. So it's basically like him getting recovered and either A, helping them out on this, or B, taking back what he said just now. And yeah, it's a whole mixed deal once again, with Shane fighting his demons, especially with all he's done throughout the series. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time.